This is the Jeff Santos Show.
33 minutes past the hour. It's the Jeff Santos Show. We're here every Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 Eastern Time. Of course, that's 12 to 3 Pacific Time. Just a reminder, tomorrow we'll be talking with Rona Fried, of course, and John Nichols. If you've been following me on Twitter, I've been tweeting back and forth with Mr. Nichols. Of course, Robert Craig's, announcement here about what's happening in Illinois. Of course, John Nichols, also a fellow Wisconsinite, probably down in Illinois as we speak, covering the elections just a couple hours away from his home city of Madison, Wisconsin. So my guess is that we're going to talk a lot tomorrow in the 5 o'clock hour with our great friend from The Nation magazine, national affairs reporter, editor. Look, folks, I think when you look at what will be happening tonight, a lot of you will be checking out the results of the elections. I think that there is going to be a lot of confusion and a lot of interviews with people who had a real difficult time, particularly in Illinois today. All right. It's the 206. It's Seattle, WA. And, of course, it is the place that we find our Renaissance man. Home of the Emerald Blues. He's a musician. He's a journalist. Democracy Watch News. He is Mark Taylor-Canfield. This is him on the piano. Take it away, Ron. All right. That's Mark Taylor-Canfield for you, folks. Mark, I hope you're doing well, my friend. Opening, this is you on the piano, a little Emerald Blues, and you are just one talented dude, man, I tell you. Great stuff. Well, first of all, I'm glad you're doing well. Obviously, you've been one of the big hot spots. Looks like New York City is going to be the one on the East Coast. How are your friends doing? How you're doing? I think there was 22 people who were killed in the Kirkland nursing home, and those that are adjacent to it, and there have been other deaths. What is the situation like today in Seattle and in Washington State?
Well, I guess it's been attributed to an old Chinese saying, right? I hope you live in interesting times.
Yes.
as a sort of a curse. So I guess we're there. I'm really surprised that the primaries, the elections are continuing. But yes, in Seattle, everything is shut down, Jeff. It's really hard, of course, for someone like me with a band. As you know, having lived in Seattle, people like to go out here. They like to go see rock shows. We have some really famous, iconic rock clubs like the Showbox, the Crocodile, used to be owned partly by Peter Buck from R.E.M. We've got Numos and all sorts of really great venues in Seattle where you can get right up and personal with your favorite bands. But, of course, all of that has been shut down because the Center for Disease Control recommendations, and also our own Mayor Jenny Durkin and the governor calling civil emergencies. So you can hear a pin drop out there at night. There was one takeout pizza place. You could smell it from a mile away because it was the only place open down in Belltown. There's still people, of course, my friends over at the QFC, the Kroger grocery stores, and the Bartels, the local chain of drugstores here. They're hanging in there and serving the public, and, we don't realize just how important some of those people are until you run into situations like this. A lot of problems with supplies, Jeff. No surgical masks, no rubbing alcohol, no hand sanitizer. The stores are just out of that inventory. And from what one of the guys that was telling me, who works for one of the local Bartels, was telling me, Amazon is backed up on their deliveries. So that's a problem. But, we're being told just use soap, use hand soap, use whatever you got. Wash your hands really well. But, it's really put a crimp in the music scene here. And like I said, as you know, people like to go out to theaters, too, here. There's a thriving theater scene in Seattle. A lot of great restaurants and bars that are just not happening right now. And it's been very difficult for people. And it looks like, my band now, we're just going to devote all of our time and energy to recording a really good CD in the studio, which is where we were all last night. I'm sleep deprived again. We were recording a song about Bernie Sanders, by the way.
We need to hear that soon. Let me ask you, Mark, when I've seen photos and I've been in different areas where people are in a small room. You get a drummer and you get a couple of guitarists and maybe a keyboard player. How close are you? And are you, looking at this social distancing that's going on now, the 6 feet and so forth? Because, sometimes when you're in a garage or in a small space, it's hard to keep that distance. How is that affecting some of the work you're doing?
Well, a lot of the tracks that I was doing last night was just me in the engineering booth because we are recording tracks separately, so we're not all in the studio at the same time.
Oh,
and that's how you do that. Yeah, it's quite common for bands. I've been in band projects where I hardly ever met the band members until we finally got on tour or went out to play clubs because we all recorded our tracks separately because of the overdubbing that everybody does now. You bring in the guitar player for one day and record all his tracks. You bring in the drummer for another day. Now, some bands do like to play live together in the studio, and we've done some really great stuff doing that, so I do miss that live element. But, it's time to get down to the nitty-gritty in the tracks and do a lot of production work, and which it's a good time for that. And by the way, Jeff, it looks like I'm actually going to have a new column at the Seattle Star where my friend Omar Wiley is the editor.
Oh, fantastic.
And, he's been trying to recruit me as a regular contributor for a while, and I really like their independent, iconoclastic point of view over there. So I think it's going to feel like a really comfortable fit. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then the band, we're working on some political music. You and I have talked about that before. I hope these songs are apropos to the current set of issues that we're dealing with. And a lot of it has to do with incompetence and corruption in government, Jeff, and we're seeing that pretty straight up right now during this crisis.
There's no doubt. We're talking with our good friend Mark Taylor-Canfield. As you know, he is based in Seattle, and of course that was really the first state that in this country that suffered very much from the coronavirus. Do you sense, Mark, that what occurred there is sort of now being isolated, that city not far from Seattle? Are there people your age and a little older, 20, 25 to say 40, who are scared but yet still willing to sort of try to lead their lives, or are they now more and more, at home, whether they're with family or if they're not, by themselves? How is that sort of whole element here, besides the music thing? People who maybe worked for Amazon or worked for Microsoft, are they now all, putting their expensive apartments on Capitol Hill and around the neighborhoods of Seattle?
Actually, there are a lot of people working from home right now, so the traffic is less. There's less commuting going on. Some, of course, first responders and people running the government and the sanitation department and things, they're going to work every day like usual. Like I mentioned, also the people working in the food stores, a lot of other local businesses are closed. But it's pretty much people are learning to do things at home. They're learning to do things even more online now, even though, we're already a culture that was sort of headed in that direction. But more and more now you see things happening strictly online. Webinars, seminars. I was on a conference call. I was invited on a conference call with Pramila Jayapal, with some health officials. You've done a good job, by the way, on your program with Dr. Kavanaugh and the representative from the Massachusetts Nurses Association. So I think a lot of us, especially, yes, keep up the good work. I think, we all are serving a public service right now with any information we can get out, and we all have to try to be very accurate and careful in what we report and what we repeat. But once we get the information, it's important that we share it with people. And as far as what's been going on politically, that's had a big effect, Jeff, because Monday night, last night there was a big online rally with Neil Young and 1,400,000 viewers on Twitter. So, and Neil Young sang Heart of Gold, which is really precious, with a tribute to Bernie, which is very appropriate, I think.
Very appropriate. Nice to see Daryl Hannah there as well. The last time I saw Daryl Hannah was at the Bumbershoot Festival with Jackson Browne back in the 90s. I think they had just broken up or whatever the situation was. But it's fascinating to see that iconic legend and Mr. Young, so many of his songs. Let me ask you, as a independent alternative media, if you might, I call myself both of those names, how frustrated are you with this corporate indulgence with Joe Biden, this real anti-Bernie Sanders bias that is going on right now? I mean, time after time, and it's all over Twitter, and if you follow me at Jeff Santos Show and at Mark Taylor-Canfield, you see just the bias that goes on in MSNBC and CNN in particular. Even so that when Fox does it, they actually give Bernie more time to talk, which is, kind of crazy. But it must be frustrating for you, because you're doing it, on a daily basis, Democracy Watch News. I am too, but everybody knows what side of the fence I'm on. I just think it's disgusting. And, of course, the DNC, puts out these talking points. Tom Perez is out there saying, oh, no, go out and vote. It's safe. We're going to do all these different things. And then they come back and they say, oh, well, we want to make sure everybody's safe. We're going to have these drive-through voting. Please, just nonsense. And, of course, the corporate media doesn't ask the tough questions. They ask one question, they don't follow up. I'm just wondering how frustrated you are with what we have seen in the coverage of Senator Sanders.
Well, I sometimes make fun of Bernie Sanders as being the I'm not saying, I'm just saying guy, or the, what else would you say in New York about the situation? It's ridiculous. And you got me going now, Jeff. See, and another thing. Bernie Sanders would say, let me be clear about this. But first of all, a quick shout out to Jim James of My Morning Jacket, the band, because he also performed for the Bernie Sanders rally. And that's what I was talking about how all the hip, young, cool bands and folks are with Bernie. They're not running to the Joe Biden camp, that's for sure.
That's not going to happen. Yeah. You may have Pat Boone or somebody over there, maybe.
I've been thinking a lot about this. I've been writing a lot about this. And first of all, I have to say that if there was ever a time when, some kind of democratic socialism looked like a good idea, right now seems like that time, and I think Bernie Sanders understands that completely. You have all of these government subsidies that are going to go out to help people, billions of dollars that should have been spent already on some of these public health issues, and now, they're talking about helping to subsidize small businesses to keep them going because we know that they're suffering the most. And what do you call that but a form of socialism? So there you go. My question, and this has to do also with the corporate media, is will the aristocratic ruling class once again be able to convince the working class to support their candidates? And they do that through manipulating the social networks and controlling the corporate news media. So their goal, of course, is, they want to maintain a status quo which supports and promotes the wealthy elite in business and on Wall Street. And in the meantime, what we see is CNN is seriously, did I say serious? Seriously biased against the campaign of Bernie Sanders. And they totally love former Vice President neoliberal Joe Biden so much that they refuse to challenge any of his outlandish statements or critique any of his misstatements or demand any kind of accountability from the guy, which is ridiculous. That's the first thing, that's the first job of a journalist, is to hold people accountable. As a journalist, I'm shamed. This is shameful, and I'm embarrassed. It's
and by the way, don't give MSNBC a pass either. No. and Brian Williams, O'Donnell, and all these other folks, who are also tied to the establishment 24/7. There are some decent journalists at MSNBC. Ali Veshi, Chris Hayes, both do an admirable job and kind of give you a different perspective. But for the most part, it is just as bad as CNN. I'm even just really frustrated with some people who try to identify themselves as friends of Bernie, like Van Jones, who goes from one side to another, depending upon how Sanders does that evening when he's on election night. He'll be on again tonight. I'll be interested to see what he has to say. But I think it's really become problematic when you have this situation with elections that are harming people, to have them voting today in Florida with a large senior citizen population, the same thing in Arizona, when the governor of Illinois goes on television and is basically asked, well, you're closing down, bars and restaurants in the city of Chicago and probably across the state of Illinois, and at the same time, you're telling people to go and vote. Oh, it's not going to be that bad. People are not going to be in lines. We talked to our good friend Robert Craig, all of his people, and he's a native of Illinois, are telling him it's complete chaos in Illinois right now. For what? They could have done it just like Ohio. They could have moved it back to June. Big deal. They could have frozen their early votes. Big deal. Everybody else can do it. You know, it's just disgusting that politics, whether it's Perez or whether it's the media in cahoots, it's very frustrating for people who want to see America take the next step and improve the lives of the working class and middle class, Mark.
Well, actually, we've talked about this before, too. There's this huge generation gap as well.
Of
and
course.
it's as wide as it was. It's just as wide as it was in the 1960s. And it's totally dividing the Democratic Party. And let's face it, you know, Joe Biden is old school. Believe me, I do not want to see another 4 years of Donald Trump. But Joe Biden also represents this post-World War II boomer generation with a very different set of priorities than most of today's youth climate activists. So to Joe, the Green New Deal might be generally a good idea, but to folks that I've seen marching in the streets and organizing like Greta Thunberg and her friends, it means survival of the planet and of themselves. So he might laugh at Bernie Sanders during the debate, but Bernie knows what's up. And Joe has to be led along because a lot of the times he's kind of clueless. I'm sorry. And Greta Thunberg and her followers aren't going to be interested in the slow-paced, middle-of-the-road centrism right now. They want a guy like Bernie Sanders in office who will shake things up and call out government reps and business leaders to be accountable for their actions, not just another neoliberal selling out the middle class and the workers because they're in allegiance with the rich. That's why the whole primary system and the national election system seems kind of like a prearranged rigged game to a lot of the younger folks. Is it any wonder that they don't show up at the polls to vote as much? And as far as corporate media manipulation has a lot to do with it too, Jeff. And I just wrote this song where I'm saying, you know, if you think like that, then you're bound to be somebody's fool, because demagogues always prey on ignorance and prejudice. So if you have a corporate media that promulgates that and promotes that, there you go.
Talking to Mark Taylor-Canfield, our Renaissance man, a great journalist. Do you hear that? And the passion in his voice here on the Jeff Santos Show. I'm intrigued, and I want to get your thoughts on this, by the fact that what we have now, as you say, a lot of young people, the fact is, and if you heard Greg Palast, and I know that you had a chance to listen to some of it last week, 500,000 voters, mainly NPP, that's no political preference, or independents, which is the second largest party in California, ahead of the Republicans, by the way, we wanted to have their votes counted. Now, once again, a delay in counting, almost 3 weeks later from Super Tuesday, and you still don't have all the votes. You know, this is disgusting. The same thing in Texas, Latino, young folks. And when you say that people who are young look at Biden and, and want to puke, and their votes aren't being counted. So they talk to their friends in Texas, they talk to their friends in Michigan. AOC mentioned it the other day, as did Senator Sanders. There was voter suppression in Michigan, voter suppression going on today. It just goes on and on and on. And no wonder 25-year-olds or 18-year-olds or 35-year-olds, say, well, look, my vote's not counting. Why should I get involved? And then, as Robert Rice said, if Joe Biden wants to bring over people who are progressive, he certainly didn't do a very good job on Sunday night. And, it's not going to fly for young people unless Sanders is the nominee. Otherwise, Democrats are going to have to do an entirely different approach if they want to have young people. And that could mean the difference, even though right now Trump looks like just a matter of time before, he is passed over and the Democrats win the election. But if there is a rebound in the economy, I can bet you right now that this would be a nip and tuck race. And that, my friends, is problematic.
Yeah, I'm not making any predictions. Like I said, 2016 should have taught us that. The corporate media who thinks that they know who's going to be our next president got it totally wrong last time, so I don't know why anybody's listening to them to begin with.
Right.
But I have seen this. I've been assigned by Democracy Watch News to cover the Bernie Sanders campaign. Now that
Warren is out of the picture. I'm not covering her campaign anymore, so who knows if I'll get a chance to talk to her again. But with Bernie, I'm there. I've seen him in person. I've talked to him in person. I've been at his events. I've seen the online events that he's done. I covered the fireside chat he had the other day. And in general, I think that he's proven that he's really concerned about the general welfare of the people. And he is coming across as a fix-it kind of guy who can take the lead on some of these important issues, especially public health issues and these economic issues. He's sounding like a statesman, not a politician. And I think his heart is obviously in the right place. So that's just my honest opinion, Jeff. I'm not paid by the Bernie Sanders party to say that. I'm not a part of his campaign. I haven't donated or contributed to his campaign. I'm just saying, as a journalist, that's my honest opinion. And, and as far as what's going on in the general media and in politics these days, I mean, some people just never seem to learn, right? We've seen it so many times before. And you know who I'm talking about. Should I say Republicans? I'm not saying, I'm just saying, right? They've given into proto-fascism, and that's what Robert Craig calls it, and I think he's right. And I would be very ashamed to call myself a member of that party right now.
Well,
I mean,
that's for sure. Well, they've been pimping out the 1% for a long, long time now, and 40 years plus. When Reagan started the whole, Republican Revolution, Reagan Revolution, when he said government is not the solution but the problem, and the Republicans have been basically trying to destroy government, put more money in their pocket, and that's been their way they rule. And tragically, they have bamboozled a lot of people. They've stolen elections in 2000 and 2004 and again in 16. And that's the case. And, of course, some of the Democrats just buy right into it, become Republican light, and that's why Bernie Sanders is in my opinion, such a breath of fresh air. Let me ask you this in our final minutes here. Do you think that the fact that Ohio called the election, that you still have New York left, that there is time for Bernie Sanders to sort of really capture, particularly senior citizens, that he has plans that will be helpful not only to them, but their sons and daughters and their grandkids as well. And I'm just wondering if, you believe that there still is time. A lot of people say, oh, close it down, it's over, they can't do it, the math. Ohio, which I think is the 8th largest state in the country, that puts them in New York potentially, if New York is considering moving it to June, and they're going to be at the epicenter of all this, and more than likely they're going to move it out of the April 28th current date. What do you think about that?
Well, first, I should give a shout-out also to Greg Palast for doing such a great job on the voter suppression issue, and we are hoping to have him on our Democracy Watch News podcast, which is also something that you've been on, Jeff, so check out the Democracy Watch News podcast.
Definitely.
As far
check
as
that
the
out,
election,
folks.
I'm not making any predictions, Jeff. Anything could change within the next 2 hours.
I agree with you there. Mark Taylor-Canfield, check him out, Democracy Watch News. Check him out if you are in Seattle, and once they get to play music again at the Showbox and other places, he'll be there. Mark, all the best, my friend. Thank you. All right, folks, I want to thank Ron Kreider for producing this broadcast. Thank you for listening. Stay safe. Keep fighting. We'll be back tomorrow. My name is Jeff Santos, and I gotta go. This edition of the Jeff Santos Show is brought to you by 116,000 members of the Massachusetts Teachers Association. MTA educators are working together every day to give all students a great public education. The MTA, dedicated to funding our future so that every student can attend the high-quality public schools, colleges, and universities our communities deserve. To find out more, visit teacher.org and be sure to follow the MTA on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Here's another way to listen to the Jeff Santos Show. Now you can listen to the Jeff Santos Show 24/7 on any Amazon Echo device. Just say, Alexa, play GAE1 station from TuneIn. Okay, Alexa can be a little bit picky, so please say it exactly like this. Alexa, play GAE1 station from TuneIn. The operative word here is GAE1. You can purchase an Amazon Echo device here on our website. This purchase will help support this station. Remember, you must have access to wireless internet for the Amazon Echo products to operate properly. And remember, our website is revolutionradionetwork.com. Scroll down till you see the Amazon Echo Dot or Amazon Show 5.